Continuing my journey through the Bone series, I now come to Bone Book 5. This is Rockjaw, Master of the Eastern Border. Bone number 4 I did a couple months ago, back in April. And the reason that it's taken me so long to get to Book 5 is because I was on a waiting list at my local library. There were a few other people who were in line to read this book before me. So, what can you do? These books are popular. If you're getting them out of your library, sometimes you have to wait a while, which is fine for me. I don't mind waiting. In fact, I've read this whole story once before when I reviewed the Bone Epic Collection, the complete Bone in one volume. I'll link to that in the description down below. But yeah, it does strike me as somewhat unfortunate for kids, who are the ideal audience for this book, and who might have less patience for waiting. Ideally, a kid would just have all 9 of these books at their fingertips, but these books can get expensive. I mean, where's the price on this? If you were to buy this, it would be $26.99 US. That's just for one book out of the series, for something that you can read in a couple of hours. So, it gets expensive to build up a comic book library, but I suppose that's always been true. Anyways, I'm rambling. Point is, once I realized how long I was going to have to wait for this book, I just went ahead and ordered all the other books from my library as well. So I've got books 6, 7, 8, and 9 all lined up and ready to go. And with any luck, if disaster doesn't strike and if I keep some free time to read, I plan to knock all these books out in the next week or so, post reviews here on YouTube, and then return them to the library for somebody else to read. Anyways, Bone number 5. As I've talked about before, the conceit of these books is they're combining Disney-esque cartoon characters with a Tolkien-esque epic storyline. And as such, the tone goes back and forth between cartoony and epic fantasy, which mostly works. And we'll talk about how well that works as we go through this book. The previous books had been getting a little bit into the epic part. And this book, it's a little bit misleading to talk about these as books. They all started out as issues of comics. But this part of the story veers back hard to the cartoony part, at least initially. So we have Bone and Smiley and the rat creature Barnaby going up into the mountains to return Barnaby to the rat creatures. And there's a lot of comic relief early on. The rat creatures attack, and Smiley gets the idea to read them some Moby Dick, which he says will put anyone to sleep. But it doesn't work, so he gives it to Bone. Phone Bone reads it, and it immediately puts the rat creatures to sleep. And Smiley comments, "Maybe it's not Moby Dick at all. Maybe it's you." Oh, shut up. So this is obviously kind of cartoon logic here. This is part of the cartoony part of the story. I guess maybe I overanalyze these things, but I can't help but wonder when I read these parts, okay, well, what rules are we operating under here? So the next time our heroes get in danger, are we going to be operating by the cartoony type rules or by the epic fantasy rules? Now, part of this, no doubt, is because I'm a grown man reading a comic intended for children. But I actually had the same question when I was a child. I mean, Bone wasn't around when I was a child, but reading the Donald Duck, Carl Barks comics, or what's his name, Floyd Godson, Mickey Mouse comics, I would often have the same questions in those. So, I don't know, maybe it's just me. But yeah, I guess for the cartoony parts, we're going for the cartoony logic here. Anyways, the rat creatures wake up, attack again. Now, you would think, obviously, they would try the same thing again to read from Moby Dick, but that gag has already been used up, so we're not going to be revisiting that. Again, cartoon logic. So they fight off the rat creatures, and then we have Rockjaw, or as he calls himself, Rockjaw, I think is how you're supposed to pronounce it there. The gag here is that Smiley Bone and Funny Bone call him Rockjaw. And he is a giant mountain lion who is on the side of neither good nor evil. So he torments them a little bit, and then we get... Sorry, he doesn't torment. That's the wrong word. He plays with them a little bit, like a cat playing with his food. And then we get the possums entering the picture and finding Smiley Bone's sandwich crust. As far as I can remember, the possums never really spent a lot of time with Smiley Bone, at least not in the pages that we saw. But there were probably times when they were living in the farm at Grandma Ben's house that they had more time with the possum kids than was portrayed in the pages of the comic. So the possums are getting back to the cartoony part of the book. And here we meet some more cartoon animals. Later on in the book, we're going to meet a whole bunch of baby cartoon animals, or children cartoon animals. But here we just first meet Roderick. And Roderick's parents have been eaten by the rat creatures, which I've mentioned this before in some of my other Bone books. This strikes me as a little bit heavy for the cartoony element. So Roderick and the possums this is meant to be more of the cartoon part of the story. And then they have the rat creatures, and Roderick said, "Yep, they ate my mom and dad." "They ate them? Man, that's harsh. Those dorks. You can't go around eating other people." "Well, they are carnivores." Okay, so far so good. Roderick's parents have been eaten, but we're playing it for laughs. It's harsh. Those dorks can't go around eating other people. Well, they are carnivores. But then we get Sniff, "I miss my mama." And then I think, okay, well, if we're going to go cartoony here, I don't want to see the raccoon grieving over the death of his mother. Now we're getting a little heavy, and fine, we could have gone a little bit heavier if it was a heavy moment, but then we're going back into the cartoony stuff. And in fact, later on, these two rat creatures that ate Roderick's parents are going to be with Roderick and the rest of the gang in more cartoony shenanigans. And the heavy element that Roderick might be grieving the death of his mother here. I wish it would have just been handled a little bit different here. But ultimately, it's just one line, isn't it? But yes, this is going to continue into the sequel series to Bone. Bone Quest for the Spark Trilogy, which I've already reviewed on this channel, because Roderick the Raccoon, pictured here, and over here and here, is going to be one of the main characters in that trilogy. He's, I think, one of the few characters from the original Bone epic that got reused in that sequel trilogy. And in that trilogy, he's going to team up with the rat creatures again. So ends up teaming up with the very rat creatures who ate his parents. So, yeah, this is, if it's a tonal misstep, it's one that's wound its way all throughout the core of the series now, I guess. But anyways, moving on. We get more cartoony elements as the possums try and get the rat creatures to chase them. Rat creatures chase the possums. And then here's some great slapstick. It says, "Stop moving, you idiot. Do you want this tree to come loose?" And then, whump. "Don't worry, comrade, I am here to save you." Creak. And then Rockjaw says, "Stupid, stupid rat creatures," before they all fall over. And then Roderick asks his friends to come out, and all the other orphaned baby animals or child animals come out. So yeah, we are leaning hard into the Disney-esque cartoon part of this epic story. And we are now, for the next few issues, going to have all these cartoon baby animals, or child animals, around. Which works well. And, Jeff Smith has got that Disney-esque style down pat. So these all look like very fun characters to hang out with. They stick around for a few issues. The rest of this book, and then they part ways, and we don't really see them again, if memory serves. Except, of course, for Roderick Raccoon, who's going to show up in Quest for the Spark, the sequel trilogy to Bone. So it's, it's a little bit of a pity that these characters don't continue on in the epic, but, well, the epic's already got enough characters it's juggling, isn't it? And besides which, aside from just looking cute, these animals don't really get developed much into their own personality. I mean, the beaver is the grumpy one, I guess, but the rest of them are just pretty interchangeable. And as far as who does what or who says what line, they don't get developed beyond their appearance, which is how these animals tend to go in these Bone stories. In Bone Tall Tales, which also had a cast of baby animals or child animals, most of them really didn't get developed at all. So yeah, which is, I guess, what happens when you introduce 10 cute baby animals at once. They don't all get individual personalities. Jeff Smith is generally good at developing character personalities otherwise. So you wonder if he had introduced them one at a time or something like that, if they would have been more distinctive, but whatever. This is what we got. So the rat creatures show up, and then King Duck shows up. Now, spoilers. It's going to show up that this is actually, it's going to turn out that this is actually not the real King Duck. We find out later that this was all an hallucination, but we don't know that when we're reading this at the time, and it seems to be pretty intense at the time. I mean, pretty intense and yet cartoony as well. So they're trying to escape King Duck. The rat creatures, or trying to sneak in, eating some of the baby animals. Smiley finds out. Hey, smack. P'too. What's the big idea? Eating our friend. And so we're in the middle of escaping. Control yourself. Control myself? I'm a monster. Monsters don't control themselves. That's the whole idea. So they debate whether or not they can control themselves on this. Phonebone says, could we discuss this from a safer vantage point? Like, say, a slightly larger ledge? So there are uneasy allies on this, but they are allies for the moment because they're all escaping from Kindok. And then the locusts show up and attack, but are frightened off by a medallion in Phonebone's bag. And this is where we find out that what they saw was most likely an illusion. Sorry, this page is sticking a little bit. Ugh. Yeah, that what they saw with Kindok was the dream. So then they continue on. And Rockjaw comes out again. He found them on the other side of the mountain. There's some interesting philosophy going on here, which is, I suppose, on the scale of things, maybe not all that deep, but for a kid's comic like this is surprisingly deep. Rockjaw is talking about happiness. He says, the power is the true secret to satisfaction. Smiley says, satisfaction and happiness are not the same thing. Yeah, Rockjaw, a person can be satisfied and not be happy. Oh, I see what your problem is. You believe someone truly can be happy. Well, yeah, which is an interesting question, huh? Whether human beings are actually wired for happiness. I was reading one book that hypothesized that maybe in terms of evolution, we're not wired to be happy. Because if we were happy, we would stop trying to better ourselves. And evolution favors those who are always striving. You see, happiness itself is just an emotion that can be indulged. The only thing of substance that matters is power. And says, what about good and evil? Bah! There is no good and evil. What is evil to you depends on what side you are on. What is good to you is evil to the rat creatures and vice versa. That's not true. Isn't it, my little orphans? Do you think the sun cares if your mama and papa were eaten by rat creatures? It doesn't. The sun will set tonight and rise again tomorrow, whether you and I are here or not. Anything these miserable wretches do is utterly insignificant. There is no good or evil, only nature. And in nature, the only thing that matters is power. So some interesting philosophy being battered around here, even though the framing of the narrative has framed Rockjaw as not one of the good guys. So I don't think we're meant to agree with what he says, but interesting. Now they're encounter Kindok again, and this time it's the real Kindok. Rockjaw is chased away momentarily, but then comes back, and this is good or interesting visual storytelling. So both Rockjaw and Kindok are giants. So we see these two giants fighting each other while all the little people are running around. They run into the forest, say goodbye to their animal friends, which, as far as memory serves, is the last we see of them in this story. And then it looks like Bartleby is going to rejoin the rat creatures, which is where we end this volume. And then to be continued in the next volume. So stay tuned for Volume 6. I will read and review Volume 6 as soon as I can and then post that review.